Video game music is an integral part of building narrative in plenty of games. Music has multiple roles within games, such as connecting different layers and contexts between characters, environments, and storylines together. For the player, music and sound have a major impact on the immersiveness of the gaming experience, and they support the visual narrative by providing additional information about the game itself. Finally, music has a powerful way of differentiating characters and environments, and it emphasizes the changes in the narrative. Psychologically, music is an important feature in video games. In recent years, the impact on our emotional engagement has been a particular interest in research. In this episode, we will take a look at the roles of music in games that we have played ourselves. First, let's have a look at how game music is connected to one of the most important assets of many story-driven games, the characters you play as. The music of the main character in Assassin's Creed Odyssey serves both as an immersive auditive feature at the beginning of the game as well as voicing the essence of the game. The theme of the main character is heard at its purest form when introducing the character. Here you will hear a female voice singing a Greek tragedy about the war and family, accompanied by a lyre. The historical context is important here not only because it's typical for the Assassin's Creed franchise, but also because it tells the story of the main character and the overarching themes of the story: loss, the longing for a family, and the strength of love. Where the historical context of Assassin's Creed Odyssey is portrayed in the music by using instruments and literature inspired by ancient Greece, the theme of the main character in Horizon Zero Dawn is more a traditional depiction of a cinematic theme, which tells the story of a child growing to adulthood and taking on the upcoming challenges. The musical voice of Aloy, the main character, is a solo cello playing in the melody. The piece is developed to its full glory as she masters her skills and is finally ready to begin her quest. The theme is then repeated throughout the game in various situations in shorter and more modest variations. For the player, the main theme creates an instant emotional connection to the character. Later in the game, the theme serves as a reminder for the player of the young Aloy at the beginning of the story and what she has experienced after leaving home. Moving on to games with multiple playable characters, our next example is Detroit Become Human, where the player shapes the future of three different characters, Connor, Kara, and Marcus, by making various choices throughout the game, which many a time determine their fate. To underline the differences between the three main characters and their unique personalities, three individual composers were hired to create the soundtrack for the game, each focusing on one of the playable characters. The music supervisor of the project, Mario Lockwood, has stated that "We make games that are very narrative. We are really into interactive drama, so the soundtrack also had to go in that direction, supporting the three characters' very different stories. We really wanted three colors, three musical sound identities, and from there having three composers made sense, since the story of Kara, Marcus, and Connor are all completely different." Giving a distinguishable soundtrack for different characters that aren't necessarily the controllable ones is also a very common way of enhancing the game world. Music can work as an introduction tool for new encounters and as a medium for giving hints of different persons' intentions. In Detroit, the music reflects the main trio's personal changes that they have to go through as a part of their hardships. In this manner, the game soundtrack's different features resemble a lot of those used in the film industry. After all, narration is very often tied to cutscenes or cinematic sequences in video games as well. Another great example comes from Devil May Cry 5, where the difference between three main characters can be heard in their battle music. The youngest fighter Nero has an upbeat industrial rock song. Colmer and Gothic character V has a bit slower and darker metal song, whereas the most confident and experienced fighter Dante has a heavy metal song as his battle music. Playing with different characters and hearing their songs creates a different feeling during each phase of the gameplay. Another important aspect of game music is its connection to the game environment. In many games, music doesn't just play in the background uninterruptedly. Instead, it's woven closely to the surroundings of the player. Traditionally, the link between music and the game environment is created with the use of distinct musical themes or more ambient harmony. This link can also be associated directly with the game characters, as seen in Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. In this game, the music and sound design of the main character, Senua, are heavily intertwined with the environment. Usually the main character has a theme which is played especially during the beginning and important turning points in the story, in order to highlight the character. However, in Senua's Sacrifice there are rather voices than music being played, because the most distinctive feature of this game is that our main character is schizophrenic, and for that reason is hearing voices. These voices are a part of her and the surrounding world, constantly warning her and therefore the player as well of what is to come. This way, the voices that Senua is hearing are also a part of the environment sounds. In this example, the voices reflect both the character herself as well as the fact that they are woven together with the broader soundscape of the environment. As an environmental custom, the music and its timing can be used to inform the player when a certain location is nearby. In many open-world games, the music is not always played throughout exploring the environment, but rather when the attention of the player needs to be drawn towards an event, threat, or an unknown location. In Assassin's Creed Odyssey, music is always cued to begin playing when nearing a checkpoint, which in this case is a place up high, and when triggered, reveals an area, the quests and other features within its vicinity. This example gives the player a view of the home area which the music embodies with a calm and laid-back harmony. When the checkpoint is triggered, the music grows to match the cutscene. Environmental changes can also be heard clearly in Subnautica when you explore the ocean depths of an alien planet. The game map has been divided into different biomes which each have their very own biodiversity of flora and fauna. Each time the player arrives at a new biome, the soundtrack changes depending on their current surroundings. Also, when the player dives into the deeper sections of the game, the more laid-back techno beats switch into more echoey and ominous sounds. This way, the environmental changes and the narration of the game have been amplified with music which incorporates different alien-like sounds and harmonies. Game music can be highly adaptable and differ a lot depending on the situation the player is facing at each moment. Balancing between action-packed sequences and peaceful sceneries, it's essential for the game developers to understand where and when music needs to be added in the game, and when other sounds are suitable for filling the soundscape. In Shadow of the Colossus, this contrast has been elevated to the max. When the player roams around the huge open world, the music serves only as a guide for the player to find and fight their next opponent. At other times, when there is no battle approaching, all the player can hear are the subtle sounds of their surroundings, such as wind, ocean waves, small animals, and the stamping of horse hooves. By giving the soundscape time to rest between intense battle scenes, the dynamic orchestral score sounds all the more magnificent as it kicks back in. Our third category concerns the different ways of how game music can be intertwined with boss battle scenes during the gameplay. Traditionally, bosses are characters that only appear for short moments during the player's adventures and are only alluded to by other characters. Therefore, the bulk of their narrative is conveyed only in the heat of battle. This lets the music play an even greater part in setting the stage for these epic encounters. Known for its unforgiving boss fights, Elden Ring is a game where the music plays an important role in building narrative. Because the bulk of Elden Ring's story is hidden in small details and item descriptions, the feelings and narrative details conveyed through music take even greater importance in telling the story in the moment. This can be seen for example in the fight against the regal ancestor spirit. Here, as the name implies, you are fighting against an ancient spirit of nature. The music reflects this narrative by taking different native instruments and traditional folk music styles from all around the world. These include, for example, Mongolian throat singing, the Australian didgeridoo, Celtic-style violin, Native American flute, and the Brazilian rainmaker, to name a few. These evoke imagery of ancient rituals and the feeling of something that is older and greater than us, regardless of what culture we belong to. It is a genius way of ensuring that the fight truly feels ancient and close to nature to all players. Another fight like this can be found at the very end of the game, where the player faces against the Elden Beast, a creature from outer space that is far too complex for a mere human to grasp. This narrative is complemented by the ethereal sounding vocals that linger over the beautiful chords of the harp. The sense of grandness is built through this slow moving piece by contrasting darker lower register sounds with very bright high register ones. The music doesn't have a clear harmonic structure, which is why it feels like it's staying in place and is therefore never changing. It evokes the feeling that this ethereal beast is an unmoving rock that can't be truly beaten. The intent of evoking emotional reactions in the player during fighting scenes can also be found in Devil May Cry 5. When an enemy sees the player, a battle soundtrack begins to play. This warns the player of an enemy and prepares them for a fight. During the fight, music keeps the player excited and energized. In this game's case, the battle music is heavy metal, which showcases the game's and the character's nature. The game wants the player to fight using colorful and cool combos, and the music emphasizes the feeling of being a demon fighter. Game soundtrack during fights can evoke excitement and make the player ready for high-paced action. In contrast, sudden calm and melodramatic music can calm the player and prepare them for an emotional and possibly plot-heavy scene. After many fights with monsters, the music changes to a calmer one, as the character is slowly making his way forward. The music intensifies when the character reaches the destination, his worn-out childhood home filled with memories. As a comparison, in Shadow of the Colossus, battle music typically starts to play when the Colossi are aware of the player's presence. The battle sequence is elevated with a symphony orchestral composition that really stresses the heat of battle. After the encounter, as your opponent crashes to the ground, the music changes into a sensitive and melancholic melody which evokes a suspicious feeling in the player and directly questions their act of killing. This way, the music attaches the boss fight scenes intimately to the game's narrative context. Sometimes the music at the beginning of the fight is very minimal and emerges only at the last moment before the corresponding event. For example, in Senua's sacrifice, the indication of a fight is perceived only by the warnings of her inner voices. This creates a strong emotional reaction in the player. The lack of a distinct auditive sign preceding the fight, as well as the game not teaching or showing any clues as how to navigate the game, the psychological and emotional stress the player most likely experiences is very much aligned with the loneliness of the main character. The fight itself is auditively straightforward and is typical to this particular game. There is no epicness or grand gestures. Like Senua herself, the player must figure out their own way out of the fight. This concludes our review of how music can be deployed in different occasions in video games. The roles of music are layered and they imply different events in games such as the ones we had a look at. Despite various genres, the purpose of music evoking emotion is undisputed, and it is also an underlying attribute of all the games with music in them. Video game music has the ability to connect the player to the story, create an immersive experience, and it plays a major part in what makes playing video games such a delight. Thanks for watching.